The United States says it's hit 90 military targets in Iran in the latest round of strikes, putting the fragile ceasefire between the two nations under renewed pressure. Iran reported explosions in several coastal areas, while there have been power cuts in the north, where a rail bridge was also damaged. Tehran has retaliated, targeting American assets in neighbouring Gulf countries. Explosions were reported in the Bahraini capital, while in Kuwait, the military said its air defences had intercepted missiles and drones. President Trump has warned attacks on Iran could get much worse after declaring the ceasefire with Tehran to be over because of the Iranian attacks in the Strait of Hormuz.
We just hit them very hard. And I say we hit them 20-1. Every time they hit us, we're going to hit them 20. And we did it last night. They did a little something today, but it was really retribution for last night. They hit actually 3 boats, not 2. And when they hit, we hit back much harder.
Well, let's now join our North America correspondent, Peter Bowes, for the latest on what's going on. Peter, the president at the NATO summit, President Trump did promise another night of military action, and that's what we've seen.
It's been quite a wild 48 hours of attacks and also words from the president. I think what we've seen in the last few hours has been more serious than on Tuesday night, hitting 90 Iranian military targets. That's about 10 more than on Tuesday, but a very similar sequence of events hitting air defense systems and missile and drone storage sites along the southern coast of Iran, very close to the Strait of Hormuz. And as we've just heard the president say, this was, again, in retaliation for Iran's attacks on those vessels much earlier in the week. The question now is, does this end here, Sally, or is the president planning to continue with these attacks throughout the week? And I think a lot of people, especially looking at how the markets have responded to this, a lot of people hoping that this will be it, that these tit-for-tat skirmishes, as they're often described, although very serious, much more than skirmishes really, these have become fairly typical over the last few weeks, while a ceasefire is supposed to be in force.
Yeah, and in terms of reaction, we have seen the oil price spike sort of the highest level seen for sort of 2 to 3 weeks, which I would imagine in the United States is a real concern when people fill up their vehicles. This is what is on their minds, and that's certainly on the mind of President Trump, isn't it?
Exactly. And people had been hoping over the last couple of weeks, and they'd seen gas prices come down a little bit, and I think they had much further to fall, but people had been hoping that this perhaps was the beginning of the end of those very high prices that have proved quite crippling for many Americans. And of course, we are inching much closer to those midterm elections in November, just 4 months away now. And that will be the time that Americans could inflict political damage on not only the president, well, indirectly on the president, he isn't going to be on the ballot paper himself, but the Republicans could suffer if people blame the president for what is continuing to happen in Iran and how it is affecting people in terms of petrol prices and more generally the cost of living has risen for many Americans because of this war.
OK, Peter, for now, thank you very much indeed with the latest there, Peter Bowes. Let's now bring in Jessica Genoa, who's an Associate Professor in International Relations at the University of New South Wales. Welcome to BBC News. We are seeing, of course, Iran retaliate as well to the second night of strikes from the US. What is your take on these latest developments?
So this does seem like a more precarious moment than we've seen certainly since the 17th of June when that Memorandum of Understanding was signed. And it does feel that this could be a bit of a turning point in terms of both sides realising that we're probably not headed towards a more substantive peace agreement, as was sort of Trump's best case option, but that we're actually likely to see more of a precarious ceasefire where we are going to see these sort of tit for tats continue to take place. And that's partly because this whole episode has really shown that the Iranian regime is very happy to double down on ensuring that they can get control over the Strait of Hormuz. So it wasn't enough for them as part of the Memorandum of Understanding that sanctions were lifted, that they could get their own ships in and out of the Strait of Hormuz, and that they would supposedly be getting quite a substantial reconstruction fund. But in addition, they are really determined to ensure that they get full control over the Strait of Hormuz, and they're willing to shoot at those commercial vessels in order to show that resolve. And I think that puts us really in a very precarious situation, because it's very likely, as we've seen, that the US will respond militarily to any strikes from Iran in the Strait of Hormuz, and also will not be willing to leave the region whilst Iran is so directly and so obviously stating that they're really going to maintain this control, despite the fact that
I guess they would argue, and I have seen this argument coming through from commentators looking at Iran, that it's all about interpretation of that MOU and what it meant in terms of the opening up of the strait for the 60 days and how that works, how it operates. I understood that Iran thought that they were given control of it during the 60 days, even though they would allow vessels to move freely.
So that's, of course, a key point. And what we're actually seeing now is a direct result of the fact that that MOU was quite vague. So what the MOU said was that Iran would put in its best efforts to try to ensure security for commercial vessels going in and out of the Strait of Hormuz without payment for at least 60 days. So that's already a bit vague. What does best efforts mean? How is Iran going to do that? And then in terms of the shipping in and out of the Strait of Hormuz, the MOU stated that Iran, the Iranian regime and Oman, possibly also in consultation with other Gulf countries, would kind of work out how shipping would go in and out of the Strait of Hormuz. So again, pretty vague. It didn't clearly say that this would all be under Iran's purview and remit, but at the same time, it didn't say that Iran would have to guarantee that ships could actually go through what's called the sort of Omani shipping route that hugs the Gulf of Oman, and that's where Iran kind of objects to vessels going out using that route.
Sorry, Jessica, sorry to interrupt, because we're really tight for time. So a brief answer, if you will. It does feel, though, like we are very much in a stalemate. We are stuck in this situation. It's a bit like Groundhog Day, where Iran attacks vessels, the US attacks Iran, Iran retaliates, and we can't seem to get beyond this point.
That's absolutely right. And that is unfortunately what I expect going forward. I don't think we'll go back to full-scale escalation and all-out war, because the US really does not want that. Wouldn't be good for Iran either. I don't think we'll see a full ceasefire holding. We certainly won't see any kind of substantial peace agreement coming out of this. I think, unfortunately, we're stuck in this sort of limbo zone for at least another few months, if not longer, which actually means the US maintaining some kind of engagement with Iran. It means for us all around the world that there's still uncertainty over the Strait of Hormuz and what happens with goods getting out into the global markets. So unfortunately, yes, I think that's the situation we're probably going to be facing, with a lot of uncertainty for quite a few months to come.
Jessica, Genoa, thank you so much for your time and analysis. And I'm just keeping a very close eye on financial markets. Share markets are not perturbed at all. We've got share markets in Asia rising today mostly, but the oil price is also spiking. We're nearly at $79 for a barrel of Brent. We'll have a lot more on that in business today.